Ever since Gen 1, I had always wanted a Gengar in my party, but what I didn't know at the time was, like getting Alakazam and Machamp, you had to trade to make it evolve, and I'll never forgive Game Freak for that injustice. But childhood injustice aside, is Gengar good enough to make it through the game solo, and with as few battles as possible? I want to go over its stats, moveset, as well as some things working against us in the run, in addition to my usual rules spiel. So if you want to head right into the run, you can use the timestamps for that. Built a little like a glass cannon, Gengar's MO is to hit fast and hard. Its base stat total of 500 is a little on the low side when considering a solo/minimum battles run, but its high special attack, in theory, should give us the power we need to make it through tough encounters, and in theory, even its low defense, special defense, and HP shouldn't be too bad if we're effectively one-shotting the opponent's Pokemon. But things never quite work out that way. Gengar's learn set isn't great. Its first consistently damaging move, disregarding things like Nightshade, comes at level 22 with Sucker Punch. Even then, it's leaning into Gengar's poor physical, and we're running with a modest Gengar, which means its attack is lowered that little bit further. You get Shadow Ball at level 33, so we're going to be relying on the TMs that we can get for a large amount of this run. Not only that, to ramp up the difficulty, I do choose to eventually delete both Hypnosis and Confuse Ray early on. If we could just Dream Eater our way to victory, it takes any kind of challenge out of the run. Another positive of Gengar is its TM coverage. It can learn a lot of decent moves that we'll be leaning on heavily during the run. Moves like Thunder, Focus Blast, and Psychic are particularly going to be saving us. To look at Gengar's weaknesses briefly, you can pretty much take Ground out of the picture because of its Levitate ability. However, your opponent's Pokemon tend to have more dark moves than you think, which is something we have to be cautious about. One final point before the rules is that I'm using a Gengar with perfect IVs. This is because without it, we'd be in for a tougher time with the lack of EVs we can obtain through trainer battles. It also means, along with the trainer doc in the description, you could, in theory, replicate this run's, well, I won't call it success, but what I essentially did. So we have our Pokemon, let's go over the rules, which are pretty simple. Rule number 1 is no items in battle, but held items are fine. Rule number 2 is no catching of wild Pokemon unless it's for HM purposes or a trade. Number 3 is no fighting a trainer unless we absolutely have to. I've listed the trainers in a doc in the description, but I'll need to circle back to this when it's relevant shortly. And number 4 is no save states in battle. We also have to be able to take on the Elite Four in just one run. And that's it, those are the rules. Now we can start the run. Now, you may have already been thinking of an inherent problem with choosing to use a ghost Pokemon at the very start of this, and you'd be right. After we've chosen our name and all that, you head to Lake Verity where you can choose your starter. For Run Purity, I also added in Gengar instead of Chimchar, though it makes a little difference in the end. We soon run into our very first challenge, the wall that is Starly. Obviously, ghost moves don't work against normal type Pokemon, and vice versa. So, as you might expect, we're stuck in a back and forth with Starly until I eventually use all of my moves and am able to struggle to victory. The next few battles should be fun. After that, I then insert the perfect Gengar into my party in place of the old one. We then proceed along Route 201, meet up with Barry and the Professor. I'll be circling back to this later, but at this stage of the game, Barry has yet to be abducted by Team Galactic. I'll point out the moment this happens later on because it becomes quite important. Spoilers for those who haven't played Diamond and Pearl. We run into another roadblock with the trainer Tristan. Like our starter battle, he has a Starly, which we're ineffective against. And once again, we simply have to spam all our moves and use struggle. Then, you guessed it, after that, we have yet another unavoidable trainer, but this one has 2 Pokemon. While I do run down all my moves but save 1 Hypnosis, I buy some potions to heal up. Now, the problem with struggle is that you take back a portion of the damage you deal out. With 2 Bidoof, by the time we've knocked out the first one, we're on low health for the second. Even though it can't hit us, we do a great job of knocking ourselves out. We have no berries yet, so it may seem we have no options. However, struggle isn't technically flat damage. Like other moves, it works on a range, so you have to keep retrying this battle until you get a favourable range on both Pokemon, which means doing over half damage with your attacks. If you reset enough times and can get crit to boot, you can get past this battle. Hopefully this trend isn't going to last long. We eventually make it to Jubilife City, where we meet a roadblock that can't be struggled out of: Barry. We're at level 8 and he has 2 Pokemon, Starly and Piplup. Though we can attempt to put Starly to sleep and defeat it, we simply don't have enough health to defeat Piplup. Like, we won't ever have enough health, unless we got insane crits. If we were purists about the challenge, it would technically end here. There's no way through. Well, there is, and it doesn't really require leveling up. However, it does require taking 2 more trainer battles than are technically required. Rather than just call it there, I decided to battle 2 trainers in the trainer school, because when you defeat them, they'll give you the TM for hidden power. With that, we now have a chance. Now, the battle with Barry is a joke. Unfortunately for us, this ignites Barry's lust for power, which will come back to bite us later on. With that done, we can head to Oreburgh and meet Raw. As somewhat of an aside, solo challenges are often frustrating in a lot of Pokemon games, because Game Freak are obsessed with having a rock-type gym leader as your first gym. Honestly, you're better off having normal if you want to tutorialize the player, but that's a discussion for another time. Either way, Rourke's not much to talk about. Hidden Power, which ended up being Dark, is more than enough to chip away at his entire team for a relatively easy victory and our first badge. So far, we've just been in 9 battles. We have some story beats standing in our way before Eterna taking us to the Valley Windworks. Mars isn't too much of a problem, though her Purugly has Feint Attack, which can do a pretty good job of knocking Gengar out. It's in this battle that I decide 2 things. The first was to only lean on the power of Hypnosis for this battle only, and then just delete it going forward. And this also applies to Confuse Ray. As I said before, Hypnosis and Confuse Ray, they're kind of too cheap for what we want to do and can overcome a lot of the hurdles later on. From a narrative point, I think this is where the game is trying to show you how much more successful you are as a trainer than Barry, because you're able to take on Team Galactic, but also show that Galactic has managed to amass quite powerful trainers and Pokemon. So in Eterna City, we have Gardenia's gimmicky gym. You're forced to fight the trainers here until she appears. Once again, we're in a battle where we can lean on Hidden Power as our only decent move to get through her Pokemon. However, her Roserade really can't do much against us because of our poison typing. The next proper encounter we have is in the Galactic Eterna building against Jupiter. We somehow managed to get past the Skunk Tank when it should have absolutely KO'd us. After that, it's Barry again. Through this defeat, we only spurn him further. Our once friendly rivalry is swiftly developing into a burning rage. He vows to get tougher, not knowing the lengths he'll soon go to achieve that goal. Remember Barry, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. After that, we're forced to mess about getting the strength TM, but nothing eventful happens until we run across Ace Trainer Dennis on Route 215. This guy has 2 Pokemon, a Monferno and a Gyarados, and we're still at a point where we've not learned any decent moves, nor do we have access to any helpful TMs. The Monferno isn't too much of a problem. It will be annoying and use Torment, which doesn't allow us to use the same move twice in a row. And considering how our opponents have been better in defense than special defense, it makes this battle annoying. But the real roadblock is the Gyarados. This thing has Bite, and Gengar has poor defense. While we can make it past the Monferno, as soon as Gyarados comes out, its Bite is just absolutely tearing through us, and there's nothing we can do about it. The Thunder TM is over the road in Veilstone. I could maybe use some rare candies, but even that wouldn't help too much. So maybe I should have hung on to Hypnosis. Eventually, it comes down to luck. You need Monferno to not use Torment and then spam Hidden Power until it's KO'd. If I didn't have a decent Hidden Power, then I'm not sure what I honestly could have done here. After eventually making it through that roadblock, we can tackle Veilstone Gym and take on Maylene. By now, we've been in just 33 battles. Navigating the gym to avoid battles can be a bit of a pain, but you can make it through with just fighting 1 trainer. For Maylene, we're at level 28. She has a Meta-type, a Choke, and a Lucario. The first two can't really do a great deal against us, even though on my first attempt the Machoke manages to whittle us down. When we do actually make it to Lucario, we're on 59 HP, where Lucario's Force Palm can slap the ghost out of us. What's more, Machoke can use Foresight, which will allow it and Lucario to be able to attack us. The solution to this gym isn't terribly complex. With access to Veilstone Department Store, we can purchase the Focus Blast TM. In this gen, while Steel is still pretty defensively OP, it is weak to fighting. Along with Gengar's awesome special attack, Force Blast can easily take out Lucario. The rest of the gyms we have in store aren't really going to test us a great deal thanks to Gengar's coverage. For Crash of Wake, we have Thunder. This means that his Gyarados is a one-shot, and it's the same story for Floatzel. Even though we have to resort to Hidden Power for Quagsire, it's just no competition. Then at level 33, we can learn one of Gengar's most valuable moves, Shadow Ball. Finally, before facing Fantina, we've now been in 46 battles. Her being a ghost type and us having Shadow Ball means this battle has all but been decided. Drifblim takes a Shadow Ball, Miss Magius takes a Shadow Ball, finally it's us and we're Shadow Balling our way to victory. Byron, while not particularly challenging, does bring to light something that will be annoying very shortly, Bronzor. In this gen, unlike later gens, it's only vulnerable to ground and fire type moves, ones we never really have access to. We're relying on Shadow Ball to knock it out. However, for the Bastiodon, we can simply go with Focus Blast, and Byron Steelix gets the same treatment. For Candice, our advantages are circumstantial. For Snova, Shadow Ball is our most effective attack. For Sneasel, we of course have Focus Blast, we level up and learn Dark Pulse, which won't really get too much use. Then for Medicham, we can use another Shadow Ball. Finally, we line up Focus Blast for Abomasnow. While I touched on it before, there has been a bit of story going on between these parts. What I failed to mention was that during this time, Barry had been abducted and then inducted into Team Galactic, unbeknownst to the player. As you head through Mount Coronet on your way to the Spear Pillar, you obviously find Team Galactic trying to stop you. While you face some grunts along the way, at the very top before facing Cyrus, you have Jupiter and Mars waiting for you in a double battle. And if my tinfoil hat was loosely placed on my head before this, it is now firmly locked in place. I say this because in this double battle, Barry performs so poorly that I can only conclude that he has been turned into a Manchurian candidate by Team Galactic. He's not only ineffective, he's practically antagonistic towards you, the player, in this battle. And this is the only reason I could come up with. His Munchlax will, 90% of the time, simply use Stockpile and then Swallow repeatedly. The little thing will just stand on the sidelines stuffing its face while the twin Bronzor will spam Gengar with extra sensory. His Munchlax will make no effort to help you. It may occasionally throw out a Body Slam in a poor attempt for Barry to say that he's on your side, wink wink, but for the most part it is useless. Along with the Bronzors, you've got a Skuntank with Night Slash, which is pretty much a one-shot. Purugly has Shadow Claw. One of the Golbats has Bite. So the odds are stacked against us. Trying this battle again and again, you can easily get walled by the Bronzor. Even with the spell tag equipped, you're not making the range on the Bronzor without leveling up. I tried to tackle the battle in a few different ways. Ideally, you have to let one of the Bronzor remain standing because the alternatives aren't that much better. Once one goes down, they will always default to a Pokemon that has a super effective move against us. If you defeat the left Bronzor, you'll get the Skuntank with Night Slash. The one on the right brings out Purugly with Shadow Claw. Technically, because we have an effective move against Purugly, I ultimately decided to focus my efforts on the right Bronzor and subsequent Pokemon. That traitor Barry still sits there pretending everything's fine, by the way. Even in the times I was able to clear through the Purugly and the Golbat, with 70% accuracy moves mind you, you still had Bronzor and then Skuntank coming out to finish the job. Success is possible, but not without luck, and the Shell Bell. We start with using Shadow Ball on the right Bronzor. To keep up the charade, the two Bronzor attack Munchlax. Next turn, we KO the Bronzor. Then, we get a Focus Blast on Purugly before Golbat is sent out. We luckily get the Thunder hit, leaving us with just the left side Pokemon to deal with. but health-wise, we're in pretty poor shape because Bronzor gets crit. When we take care of it, Skuntank then comes out. Without intervention from the Pokegods, we're not getting through this. Gengar uses Thunder on Skuntank, it hits, does good damage, and then paralyzes Skuntank. While its berry restores some of Skuntank's HP, it then gets paralyzed. Munchlax then accidentally misses with Screech, so we can use a final Thunder to defeat Skuntank. We now have their final Pokemon, the Golbat. Thankfully, this is the one without Bite. Despite that, even though I am spamming Thunder, it misses 2 times until we finally get the hit. And that is the battle. But wait, we now have to go straight into Cyrus. Thankfully, by the grace of Dialga, his Pokemon are a joke. Honchkrow goes down with Thunder, his Sneasel takes a Focus Blast, the Crobat, though fast, can't dodge our Thunder. And finally, for Gyarados, we can summon Thunder a final time. I would have lost my mind if that was a more difficult battle. With that, the healing power of friendship cures Barry of his brainwashing. He quickly flees the scene in disgrace before I push him off the Spear Pillar, but he'll be back later. After that incident at the Spear Pillar, things chill out with Volkner. Electric Pokemon are kind of neutral ground for Gengar. For the Raichu, we can lean on Shadow Ball to do the heavy lifting. However, after healing, Volkner does a big brain move and switches into the Ambipom, absolutely baiting me. Focus Blast then takes care of it, bringing out the Raichu again for it to be finished off. Luxray can then only tank a few Shadow Balls before it's dealt with too, just leaving the Octillery. But we have Thunder, and that is pretty much the end of things. We'll get to the Elite Four prep in a moment because there's still one more thing remaining, Barry's redemption arc. While you typically fight the final rival along Victory Road, it's not the case this time. Just before you head into the Elite Four, Barry turns up for a final fight. But before that, I wanted to give a shout out to the trainer in Victory Road with a Blissey, because that thing was a giant pink wall. Its insane special defense is the perfect counter to Gengar, and this battle took forever to get through. At one point, I thought I'd have to go and get Brick Break because it can just use Soft Boiled and Light Screen to make it basically invulnerable. Anyway, Barry's team is not particularly impressive. The Staraptor goes down to a Thunder, Empoleon faces the same kind of fate. Then, when we have Roserade, it's pretty ineffective against us. It's actually the Heracross which is a pain because of Night Slash. A crit from that, which happens often, is a one-shot. In the winning battle, we get through on more luck than anything, as Heracross decides to go for Aerial Ace, leaving us on 6 HP. After knocking it out, we get the dummy thick Snorlax. After Focus Blast does a fair bit of damage, Snorlax decides to snooze. We can then use another Focus Blast, which we follow up with Dark Pulse to make sure we take it down. Thankfully, we're not in another Blissey situation. Barry's final Pokemon, the Rapidash, goes down to a single Shadow Ball. So now the only challenge left are the Elite Four, and there are 2 TMs in particular that makes this whole run possible, Psychic and Giga Drain. I'll explain how and why nearer the time. That's the only prep I do for my first few tries, but that soon has no choice but to change. Rather than just see how the blind runs go, it makes more sense to explain what's needed to make each member of the Elite Four consistent, because in the end, it's only by making this as consistent as it can be that we can actually make it through without saving. Aaron is the first member of the Elite Four. We initially tried this blind run at level 57. We've been in 95 battles so far, and I've not used any rare candies yet. Aaron's team consists of a Dustox, Beautifly, Heracross, Vespiquen, and a Drapion. On the surface, these Pokemon, aside from Heracross and Beautifly, have no moves that we're weak to. It's quite the opposite. But even though we're out-leveling Aaron's Pokemon by a few levels going forward, Cynthia's Pokemon are in the 60s. But that's for later. In my first few go-arounds, I decided to teach Gengar Psychic for the Dustox, but there were also a few Pokemon coming up that were vulnerable to it. Despite getting KO'd by the Drapion the first time around, I kept using Psychic for some reason. Compared to the other first runs of the Elite Four I've had, there's definitely a way through Aaron. While Dustox often requires 2 hits from something like Shadow Ball, Beautifly will consistently go down to 1 Thunder. Psychic is effective against the Heracross, but it's still a 2-shot, and you can't pick up the Twisted Spoon easily. It's a percentage chance for a Kadabra to be holding it in the wild. We do eventually get past the Drapion and then meet the Vespiquen. Again, it's another Thunder, so pretty easy, right? For Bertha and her ground-type Pokemon, this is where Giga Drain comes in. You can get Energy Ball, but that won't be effective for very specific reasons. Anyway, Bertha, Quagsire will always be a one-shot with Giga Drain. However, we now have a problem in the form of Hippowdon. Though it's weak to Grass, Giga Drain isn't doing over half, which is an issue. Hippowdon also has access to Curse, which will raise its attack and defense, but lower its speed. Combo this with Crunch, and you can imagine the world of pain that Gengar is in for. But we get lucky the first time around. For Whiscash, its 4 times weakness to Grass is another one-shot for Giga Drain. Well, it would be if we were a higher level or had a Miracle Seed. Either way, it gets locked down and we KO it. Now, Sudowoodo, the real problem. It has Sucker Punch, which is a priority Dark move. This move does well over half to Gengar. If it were to crit, that's a one-shot. The issue we're encountering is that it's doing over half, and we're not able to get back over half with Giga Drain, so it can easily KO us. And those are our 2 main roadblocks for now, Hippowdon and Sudowoodo. While we can make it past Aaron without too many problems, we're getting walled by Bertha. At our current level, we're not making the ranges that we need to. This means, outside of crits, we're not reliably getting past Bertha. For Hippowdon, all it has to do is keep using Crunch on us, and we can't claw back enough health to make it through the battle. I've not really been going out of my way so far to collect rare candies, and there are quite a few in Diamond, Pearl and Platinum. I have 2, so I ended up using those to see how I got on. While Aaron still isn't an issue, and we still one-shot the Quagsire, when Hippowdon comes out, even though our ranges with Giga Drain can be favourable, it causes its berry to kick in. Either way, it's going to require 2 more hits to take down, and when we do, and give the same treatment to Whiscash, Sudowoodo's Sucker Punch is still proving too much for us. While I try a few more times, it's obviously a skill issue, range issue. I go around grabbing 8 rare candies, elevating Gengar to level 62. Again, Aaron, no problem, but it's becoming a quicker battle if nothing else. So is Bertha more consistent? Quagsire, one shot. Hippowdon, still not making that range, but we knock it out. Whiscash gets the Giga Drain. Sudowoodo, critical Sucker Punch. However, on the next battle, though we miss our ranges, we are able to KO Sudowoodo to reveal Bertha's final Pokemon, Golem. Golem's pretty useless, so we actually are able to knock it out, and for the first time, reach Flint. Flint is allegedly a fire type, though that's up for debate. I know they improved him slightly in Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl, and in Platinum, but anyway, there's a bit of deliberation going on in regards to the best hold item. I was thinking Spell Tag to help with the ranges, but then I'm concerned about taking damage, so I ultimately choose the Shell Bell. Flint's first Pokemon, the Rapidash, manages to tank a Shadow Ball, then uses Flare Blitz, which takes off like 3/4 of Gengar's HP. Despite the full restore, a couple more Shadow Balls manage to do the job. Then, when Drifblim is sent out, we of course have Shadow Ball waiting for it. We've managed to level up and gain back some of our health for when Infernape is sent out. I use another Shadow Ball, it does over half, a berry then heals Infernape, who then uses Flare Blitz and gets a crit. Well, it's not like it was difficult to get here or anything. If nothing, those rare candies have helped us make both Aaron and Bertha more consistent. If I had to assign percentages to them, I'd say Aaron is at 95, while Bertha is more in the 80s. But we've got to pump up those numbers. Despite the odds, the next go around, we get to Flint once again. We still stick the Shadow Ball path to victory. After the Rapidash, Lopunny is sent out instead. I'm guessing because Flint was trying to bait out the Shadow Balls, however, it can't do much, so gets a Focus Blast. Then Drifblim isn't an issue, until we see our old friend Infernape again. At level 64, we somehow get a Thunder Punch from Infernape, I'm guessing because it knew the range may not make it. Along with that, we get a crit Shadow Ball, meaning Flint's last Pokemon, the Steelix, is up next. Of course, we have Focus Blast and leave a crumpled heap of steel behind. Now, in theory, we just have Lucien next, and unlike the other members, he is, on paper, our best matchup. Along with restoring some PP, I save Dark Pulse because it's really the only effective move against his Girafarig. His first Pokemon, Mr. Mime, goes down to the mighty Shadow Ball, then it's the same story for his Alakazam. But now we get a big steely bell of a blocker in Bronzong. Again, like those annoying Bronzor, we have no effective move against it, and it certainly has good moves against us. With Shadow Ball doing just over half, and its Psychic doing well over half, we may technically get past, but we don't make the range. Another Psychic, and it's over. And that is the furthest we've been so far. I kept at it for a while, still capping myself at level 62. However, in the meantime, I go and grab some stat items like Calcium, as well as picking up the Miracle Seed in an attempt to mitigate some of those damage ranges against Bertha. However, there's no accounting for Shadow Punch crits from Sudowoodo along the way. Though we have bumped up our chances of success against Bertha by a few percent, I'm still not satisfied with how we're going against Flint. His Infernape is the biggest blocker. Being at the mercy of it maybe not using Flare Blitz is not a great position to be in. So there are ways to get past this hurdle. Number one is more rare candies, so that we're now starting at level 65 instead of 62. And the other is Psychic. I abandoned the move because it wasn't really needed against Aaron. However, it's the only reliable, calculated way to defeat the Infernape and take out any uncertainty from the battle. Being level 65 also means that we near completely deal with the ranges we've been facing against Hippowdon and Sudowoodo. Now for Flint's Rapidash. Shadow Ball does well more than enough damage to swiftly deal with it despite the healing. Lopunny gets a Focus Blast. Driftblim and then gets a Shadow Ball. And Infernape gets a Psychic. Finally, we have Steelix, which is no problem at all. With Flint on lock, it's really down to Lucien now. While Mr. Mime and Alakazam are still not a problem, Bronzong is. Shadow Ball is still not doing over half. As you might expect, it's still able to defeat us rather handily. So what to do now? Not much really. When reaching Lucien again at level 67, we get lucky with Shadow Ball and get the crit. Girafarig can be an issue because it has Psychic and we don't have a counter. This time around, by using a combo of Focus Blast and our Psychic, we're able to somehow get past it. His final Pokemon, the Medicham, is nothing special and goes down to Shadow Ball. But he's defeated, meaning that we only have Cynthia left, right? I'm not under the illusion that I'm going into this battle and I'm absolutely going to curb stomp Cynthia, but I think we have an okay chance with Gengar. We do have decent counters to some of her powerful Pokemon, and in the cases where we don't, our high special attack should hopefully carry us through. In our very first battle with Cynthia, we're level 68 against the 61 Spiritomb. Now, this thing has no weaknesses. We go with Shadow Ball, which is putting in some work this run. It has Psychic, which crits and does some pretty devastating damage. Despite the full restore, we can knock it out. But then there's my Milotic. This thing has great special defense, but we technically have a super effective move against it. Giga Drain as well, it's not great. We get an Ice Beam, not devastating. Then, after Giga Drain, we get hit with Miracle. And that's our first go at Cynthia. Not great, and Miracle is the special move equivalent of Counter. While I don't make a hard save before Cynthia, I'm not fond of wasting my time, so I make a save state. I'm not going to be using this to just defeat her, obviously, just to explore my options without a giant wind-up. For Spiritomb, it's clear that we can get past it without too much trouble, though we're on lower health by the time we get to Milotic. Giga Drain is simply the best move to use against it because we really need to be getting health back in order to tackle the rest of her Pokemon. The problem is that we ideally need to be doing more than half the Milotic to make things viable. Now, I tried this several times, and like 1 in 7 times you can make it through at our current level, we just need a little more consistency. Because Milotic can get healed, it can use Miracle and things like that. At one point I thought Thunder might give me a better chance, but compared to Giga Drain, the damage is really negligible, and you're not even getting health back if the move hits. Also, if you even did get past the Milotic, you're not one-shotting the Roserade, and that thing will use extra sensory. You better believe that's a one-shot against Gengar. So, Thunder is off the table. Psychic is the only move that we can use for the one-shot. Unfortunately, we don't have a ton of options open to us. We've got about the best moves we can have for the situation. If we're going to get through this, we need some luck, and the last few rare candies that I can be bothered picking up. But it is possible. So we start with Aaron at level 65. By now we can simply use 2 Shadow Balls for Dustox. Ideally, we don't want it to use Light Screen, because that just prolongs the battle and allows Aaron to heal Dustox. When that Pokemon is defeated, we need Thunder to hit the Beautifly for a guaranteed one-shot. For Heracross, we can tank a Night Slash and use a second Shadow Ball. When Drapion comes out, despite its berry, settling for 2 Thunders will clear it out. Finally, for Vespiquen, we just need Thunder. That's Aaron, and it's now super consistent. For Bertha, we need Giga Drain and to have the Miracle Seed equipped to trivialize things. Quagsire, as always, is a one-shot with Giga Drain. For Hippowdon, we're now easily making those 2 ranges to defeat it. Wishcash isn't even worth talking about. For Sudowoodo, it's a little closer than I'd like, but with the power of our Giga Drain compared to its Sucker Punch, we're still able to consistently progress to Bertha's final Pokemon, Golem. As you might expect, we can suck this thing dry to finish it off. Next up, we've got Flint. We'll be using Psychic later, so it makes the most sense to get rid of Dark Pulse, even though it means us taking a bit of a gamble against Lucien. I also make sure to have the Shell Bell equipped to get back some health where possible. Against Rapidash, Shadow Ball's never a one-shot, but we can outdamage Flint's ability to heal Rapidash and knock it out. Drifblim ain't worth talking about. Now, because we have Psychic, Infernape is equally less of a problem. Likewise, we can use Focus Blast for Flint's remaining 2 Pokemon, the Lopunny and the Steelix. Pretty consistent so far, however, Lucien is always there to shake things up. Bronzong is still a roadblock, so I equip the Shell Bell to make sure we're doing over half to it and can tank a move. Mr. Mime and Alakazam will, of course, go down to just 1 Shadow Ball each. Then, when Bronzong comes out, we use another Shadow Ball. While it does over half, Bronzong is healed with its berry and hits us with Psychic. It does far too much damage. However, our Shadow Ball got the special defense drop, so the next time we use it, we manage to take it out. It's not over yet though, because we have Girafarig and this thing can KO us. I deliberate for a while before eventually hitting and hoping with Focus Blast. It doesn't quite KO the Girafarig, allowing it to use Crunch and leaving us on 6 HP. Thankfully, Lucien chooses not to heal the Girafarig, so that when we use Psychic, it is just enough to knock it out. Finally, for the Medicham, we line up a Shadow Ball. Now, that was lucky, and we're going to need a bit more of that because Cynthia is the last trainer standing in our way. While our moveset hasn't changed, I do equip the Miracle Seed to help with the damage ranges on my Lotic. I also used my last remaining rare candies to get to level 71. When we see Spiritomb, I hit it with Shadow Ball. It then uses Psychic, and of course it crits. Not looking good. But we knock it out, so out comes my Lotic. I hit and hope, going straight for a Giga Drain. It still doesn't do over half. We then, thankfully, get hit with Ice Beam, taking us down to 51 HP. Another Giga Drain, no Miracle, but Aqua Ring, and I know that heal is coming. Of course, my Lotic gets a restore. I've got no choice but to stick to Giga Drain. We're still not making it over half. Then, worrying about a possible Miracle, I decide to use Psychic instead. It puts it within range of a knockout, and we get hit with Surf instead of Miracle. Now, all we need to do is hit it with another Giga Drain, which hits. At 109 HP, we've got Lucario. We line up Focus Blast, and this thing has Psychic, by the way. Thankfully, our move hits, taking it out in 1. We then have Roserade, but our Psychic is an Oko. For Gastrodon, we've got nothing to worry about because we have Giga Drain. And after knocking it out, we're at full HP for Cynthia's final Pokemon, the Garchomp. This thing has poor special defense. We use Shadow Ball, it does over half, we just then have to tank its next move, which does a fair bit of damage. But we do, which means the battle is over. One more Shadow Ball is able to knock Garchomp out. And that is the run. Diamond and Pearl get a bit of flack for being one of the easier gens to run, with some much needed improvements coming in Platinum. But at the end of the day, Garchomp destroyed that run, so it really depends what you're running with. One of the positives was that you really had to rely on making the run up to Cynthia consistent, though it kind of sucks that Lucien was a bit of a dice roll in the end. So yeah, Gengar's good, it's fast and powerful, but it was a little too brittle, I reckon. And after all that, we finished the game with a total of 100 battles, 98 mandatory and 2 optional. Technically not a pure run, but we were about 98% of the way there. But hey, maybe you could have made the run even easier. Feel free to let me know. And I've also included a list of all the trainers I fought and their locations in the description if you're interested. If you have an idea of an interesting run in the same style, let me know. And if you want to like or subscribe, then go for it. Until next time, have a good one.